Dr. Jessica Anderson stood before the mirror in NASA's newly constructed diplomatic center, adjusting her navy blue suit for the 100th time. The bags under her eyes betrayed the countless hours she'd spent studying the preliminary cultural documents the Galactic Council had sent ahead. None of it made sense. 50 pages on the proper angle to bow, another 100 on the correct way to make eye contact with species that had up to 8 eyes. "This is ridiculous," she muttered, running a hand through her auburn hair. "They've mastered faster than light travel, but can't handle a simple hello." Behind her, Admiral James Cooper cleared his throat. "Dr. Anderson, the Council's ship has entered orbit. Their diplomatic team will be landing in 20 minutes. "Great," Jessica replied, her voice dripping with the kind of sarcasm that would probably cause an interstellar incident. Just enough time to memorize another 1,000 pages of protocol. The landing pad had been prepared according to every specification the Council had provided. The ground was painted with intricate geometric patterns that were supposed to represent universal harmony or something equally pretentious. World leaders and their representatives stood in perfect formation, creating a pattern that had taken 3 days to choreograph. As the alien ship descended, its pearlescent surface reflecting the morning sun, Jessica couldn't help but think it looked like a giant space oyster. The thought made her smile, which according to page 347 of the protocol manual, was only permitted after the formal exchange of atmospheric preferences. The ship's landing ramp extended with all the ceremony of a Broadway production, complete with wisps of perfectly choreographed steam. High counselors extol emerge, their 8-foot frame draped in robes that seemed to shift colors with every movement. Behind them, a procession of various alien species formed what Jessica had started calling the Space United Nations. Everything was going according to protocol, until the High Counselor approached the human delegation. Jessica, as Earth's lead diplomatic expert, a title she'd gotten mostly because everyone else had called in sick when the aliens first made contact, was supposed to perform the traditional greeting. The problem was, at that exact moment, her brain decided to short-circuit. Later, she would blame it on lack of sleep, too much coffee, and the fact that one of the alien diplomats looking like her college rugby coach. Instead of performing the carefully choreographed 27-step greeting ritual, Dr. Jessica Anderson, Ph.D. in International Relations and humanity's first official diplomatic contact with alien life, did the most human thing possible. She grinned and went for a fist bump. "Yo, what's up? Welcome to Earth." The silence that followed was so profound you could hear the collective gasp of every human official present. Admiral Cooper looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. One of the alien diplomats actually fainted. But before anyone could react, something even more unexpected happened. A junior member of the alien delegation, a being that looked like a cross between a peacock and a mathematics textbook, raised their appendage and returned the fist bump. "Yo," they replied, their translation matrix struggling with the casual greeting. This is a most fascinating ritual of peace. What happened next would go down in both human and galactic history. Videos of the first bump heard across the stars went viral not just on Earth, but across the entire galactic network. Memes spread faster than light, with various species adding their own cultural twists to the gesture. The High Counselor, following protocol, demanded a formal apology. What they got instead was a compilation video of Earth's greatest greeting hits, everything from complex handshake routines to bear kisses, from military salutes to the wave at sports stadiums. The Council's diplomatic AI, attempting to categorize and analyze these greetings, experienced what could only be described as a digital panic attack. It began composing poetry about the chaotic nature of human communication and had to be rebooted 3 times. As Jessica sat in her office later that day, watching the Galactic social networks explode with fist bump tutorials and greeting challenge videos, she couldn't help but laugh. Humanity's first major diplomatic faux pas had somehow turned into the galaxy's hottest trend. Maybe, she said to no one in particular, we're not so bad at this diplomacy thing after all. We're just playing a different game. Commander Mike Thompson had seen some strange things during his 20 years in the diplomatic corps, but nothing quite prepared him for the sight of a 12-foot-tall alien linguist having an existential crisis over the phrase, "It's raining cats and dogs." But where are the domestic animals coming from? The linguist, a being named HFY, who resembled a sophisticated cross between a praying mantis and a library card catalog, demanded, "And why would your species consider this a normal weather phenomenon?" The Universal Translation Matrix, a quantum computer, the size of a small building that had successfully bridged the communication gap between 50,000 species, was currently running at 200% capacity trying to process English idioms. "Look," Mike said, leaning back in his chair, "it's just a saying. Like when I tell my kids I'm going to hit the hay before bed." 3 junior linguists immediately began scanning the room for violence against local agriculture. The Matrix's warning lights started flashing. "And don't even get me started on dad jokes," Mike added with a grin, unable to resist the opening. Dad jokes. HFY's antennae twitched in what Mike had learned was either deep interest or severe indigestion. "Yeah, you know. Hey, why don't scientists trust atoms? Because they make up everything." The Matrix made a sound that could only be described as a digital groan. 2 more linguists joined their colleague in the existential crisis corner. "But atoms are fundamental particles," one of the remaining analysts protested. "They don't possess the capability for deception or trustworthiness, and the phrase make-up has multiple contextual meanings. The Matrix's processors started smoking. Things only got worse when the Southern delegation arrived. Dr. Emily Grace from Alabama walked in, took one look at the increasingly frazzled alien linguists, and said, "Bless your hearts, y'all look like you could use some sweet tea." The Matrix interpreted this as a religious blessing combined with a medical diagnosis and a ritual offering. 3 different species immediately began preparing for what they thought was the start of a sacred human healing ceremony. "Now hold your horses," Emily started, which sent the Matrix into another spiral as it tried to determine why equine restraint was relevant to the situation. Mike watched in barely concealed amusement as the most advanced translation technology in the known universe grappled with the concept of fixin' to, and Mike could. The crisis point came when Mike, unable to help himself, decided to introduce the aliens to knock-knock jokes. "Knock knock," he started. "Is this a test of our audio reception?" One of the linguists asked nervously. "No, you're supposed to say, 'Who's there?' But we can clearly see you. Why would we question your presence? Just trust me. Knock knock. Who's there?" The linguists chorused uncertainly. "Interrupting cow. Interrupting C. Emu." The Matrix made a sound like a dial-up modem having a seizure and displayed the blue screen of death in 17 different languages. As emergency technical teams rushed to restore the galaxy's primary translation system, Mike found himself being pulled into an emergency council meeting. The agenda: the human language crisis and associated threats to galactic stability. But something unexpected had started to happen. Younger aliens, particularly those who had been studying human culture, began collecting and sharing these illogical language constructs. Dad jokes became an underground sensation in the Galactic Academy of Sciences. A group of particularly rebellious xenolinguists started a secret club dedicated to understanding human memes. By the time the Matrix was back online, 3 days later, It had been updated with a new protocol specifically for processing human language, the "don't think about it too hard" algorithm. Mike sat in his office, reading reports about how "your mom" jokes had somehow become a formal diplomatic response in two-star systems, and smiled. Sometimes, the best way to bridge the gap between cultures was to embrace the chaos. "Hey, Exidalfar," he called out to the passing linguist. "What do you call an alien who steals your calendar?" The linguist's antennae drooped in anticipation. "A space-time traveler." The Matrix hiccuped, but held steady. Progress, Mike thought, comes in many forms, even bad puns. Emily Richardson was the kind of person who read terms and conditions for fun. Her former high school debate team called her the Loophole Queen, a title she carried with pride right into her role as Earth's newest diplomatic advisor. When the Galactic Council presented their 10,000-page manual of diplomatic protocols, most of the human delegation groaned. Emily's eyes lit up like a kid on Christmas morning. "Has anyone actually read this entire thing?" she asked during the emergency meeting, her fingers dancing across her tablet as she speed-read through Section 47. Subsection 12, Paragraph 9 about proper tentacle placement during formal greetings. Admiral Cooper pinched the bridge of his nose. "Miss Richardson, the Council's protocols have been in place for over 10,000 years. They're considered sacred text." Sacred text with no Oxford commas, and at least 3 contradictory clauses about dispute resolution, Emily muttered. Then she sat up straight, a grin spreading across her face. "Wait a minute. According to Section 1023, any form of culturally significant performance can be used as a method of diplomatic negotiation." "So," Dr. Anderson asked, still dealing with the fallout from the Great Fist Bump incident. "So," Emily said, her voice taking on the tone that had made her debate opponents break out in cold sweats, "nowhere does it specifically define what constitutes a culturally significant performance." 3 days later, the High Council chamber witnessed something unprecedented in its millennia of existence. Emily Richardson, wearing a formal diplomatic robe, as required by Section 89, but also sporting light-up sneakers, not explicitly forbidden by any section, proposed resolving a minor trade dispute through a dance battle. The protocol states that both parties must agree to the terms, she explained to the stunned chamber. And since dance is one of humanity's oldest forms of cultural expression, to everyone's surprise, the young representative from the Centaurian Alliance immediately accepted the challenge. What followed was the first-ever intergalactic dance-off, with Emily breaking out everything from the robot to the Macarena, while her opponent responded with a mesmerizing display of multi-limbed choreography. The video went viral faster than a cat meme on old Earth internet. Soon, other species started looking for their own creative interpretations of the rules. The Andromedans proposed settling a border dispute through a cooking competition. The Orion Confederation suggested poetry, slams as a form of conflict resolution. But Emily wasn't done. She started applying what she called speedrunning strats to diplomatic processes. "Look," she explained to a bewildered council member, "if we combine the cultural exchange clause with the emergency response protocol, and then trigger the immediate action requirement by starting a flash mob, we can reduce a 6-month negotiation process to about 20 minutes. The council's legal experts watched in horror as she found ways to sequence break traditional diplomatic pathways. One particularly clever exploitation of the rules involved using a game of Simon Says to fast-track 3 trade agreements and a military alliance. "This is unprecedented," the chief protocol officer sputtered during an emergency session. "The humans are treating our sacred traditions like some sort of game." "Actually," Emily interjected, "according to Article 7, Section 13, treating something as a game doesn't invalidate its ceremonial significance. I cite the Great Puzzle Challenge of the Rigelian dynasty as precedent. The final straw came when Emily discovered that nothing in the protocols explicitly forbade creating a reality show out of diplomatic negotiations. Intergalactic Got Talent, Democracy Edition, became an overnight sensation, with representatives from various species competing to see who could resolve conflicts in the most creative way possible. As she watched the show's ratings soar and diplomatic resolution rates hit all-time highs, Emily couldn't help but feel a sense of pride. She'd turned the galaxy's most rigid system into something fun, efficient, and uniquely human. Rules are important, she told a class of young alien diplomats who had started studying human negotiation techniques. But sometimes, the best way to honor them is to find new ways to make them work. Now, who wants to learn about the diplomatic applications of rock, paper, scissors? Ryan O'Connor wasn't supposed to be at the Galactic Economic Summit. As a junior financial analyst who'd made his name trading meme stocks during the great GameStop rush of 2021, he was considered too inexperienced for such a prestigious event. But when the original Earth representative came down with space flu, Ryan was the only one available who could make it to Alpha Centauri on short notice. Just sit quietly and don't touch anything, Admiral Cooper had instructed him. The Admiral's eye was still twitching from the dance battle incident last week. Ryan lasted exactly 17 minutes before raising his hand during the Grand Economist's presentation on the 10 Millennium Standard of Galactic Currency Exchange. So what you're saying is, Ryan interrupted, his eyes gleaming with the kind of look that made financial regulators wake up in cold sweats. Your entire economy is based on predictable mathematical models and perfectly rational market behavior. The Grand Economist, a being that looked like a sentient abacus wearing a monocle, blinked all 7 of their eyes. Of course. How else would one structure an economy? Ryan pulled out his quantum tablet. Let me introduce you to something we call HODL. Within hours, the concept of meme-based trading had spread through the galactic financial networks like a computer virus written by a caffeinated college student. Ryan's impromptu presentation on the GameStop saga had several elder economic councils reaching for their alien equivalents of anxiety medication. But it makes no sense. The Grand Economist protested as Ryan explained the concept of diamond hands to an increasingly interested crowd of young alien traders. Why would anyone base investment decisions on something called a stunk? That's the neat part, Ryan grinned. It doesn't have to make sense. It just has to work. When he launched Space Reddit, a galactic version of the platform that had caused so much chaos in Earth's markets, the traditional trading houses nearly had a collective meltdown. The first post was a crude drawing of the Grand Economist with the caption, "Stonks only go up," translated into 50 different alien languages. The real chaos began when Ryan introduced cryptocurrency to the galactic markets. His presentation consisted entirely of Doge memes and rocket emojis, yet somehow resulted in 3 star systems adopting Dogecoin as their official currency. This is unprecedented, the head of the Galactic Treasury declared during an emergency session. The humans have introduced chaos theory into our economic models. Actually, Ryan said, not looking up from his tablet, where he was teaching a group of hive mind investors about loss porn and buying the dip, we just made economics fun. The final straw came when a group of alien retail investors, inspired by Earth's trading history, decided to short squeeze the ancient and prestigious house of Dzixtal Banking Consortium. The resulting market chaos made the GameStop incident look like a quiet day of trading. Ryan sat in his hastily assigned office, former storage closet, in the Galactic Financial District, watching as his creation spread across the stars. Meme-based trading had somehow become the great equalizer, allowing species that had been economically disadvantaged for millennia to challenge the old financial order. Maybe, He mused to his assistant, a former economic AI that had become obsessed with creating trading memes after exposure to Earth's financial history. We should introduce them to NFTs next. The AI made a sound that could only be described as a digital chuckle. The markets are already processing the concept of "to the moon" in literal terms. Several species have started mining operations on their moons based solely on rocket emojis. Ryan leaned back in his chair, a satisfied smile on his face. The galactic economy had never been more volatile, more accessible, or more entertaining. Traditional economic models were being rewritten to account for what the Council was now calling the human chaos factor. "You know what's really going to blow their minds," he said to the AI. "Wait until they learn about fantasy sports betting." The AI's processors made a worried whirring sound. Sometimes human innovation was a terrifying thing to behold. Captain Jennifer Martinez of the United States Air Force had one job: introduce Earth culture to the galactic community in a dignified and responsible manner. At least, that's what the brief said. Nobody had specified what dignified meant, and Jennifer had always believed in creative interpretation of orders. "You want me to what?" Admiral Cooper asked, his face turning an interesting shade of purple as he reviewed her proposal for the first major cultural exchange event. "Hot Wings Challenge," Jennifer repeated, her expression perfectly serious. "With representative species from each major galactic sector. We'll stream it live across the galaxy." "Captain, when the Council requested a demonstration of Earth's culinary arts, they were probably expecting something more traditional." "Sir, with all due respect, nothing says Earth culture like watching beings from different worlds cry over spicy chicken, while millions cheer them on." The event was scheduled for the following week. The Council's Cultural Preservation Committee sent their most distinguished members, expecting an evening of refined gastronomy. What they got instead was the first intergalactic spice challenge, complete with live commentary and a medical team on standby. The viewing numbers broke every record in galactic broadcasting history. "By the sacred algorithms," one of the network executives breathed, their crystalline form glowing with excitement. "We've never seen engagement like this. The memes alone are generating more traffic than the last 3 galactic peace summits combined." Jennifer's next project was even more ambitious. When asked to showcase Earth's entertainment industry, she bypassed classical music and fine arts entirely. Instead, she introduced the galaxy to reality TV. "This is keeping up with the Kardashians," she explained to a room full of bewildered alien cultural analysts. And this is just the beginning. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. 7 star systems became completely obsessed with Earth reality shows. The concept of drama had to be added to the universal translation matrix as a cultural constant. 3 different species started their own version of The Bachelor, though the Hive Mind Collective's version got complicated when all contestants shared the same consciousness. But it was the introduction of extreme sports that really shook things up. Jennifer organized the first Galactic X Games, featuring everything from skateboarding to base jumping. But why would anyone jump off a perfectly good space station? A council member asked, watching footage of human adrenaline junkies in action. "For the Vine," Jennifer replied without missing a beat, then remembered that Vine had been dead for years. "I mean, for the talk." The Cultural Preservation Committee had to call an emergency session when various young aliens started attempting parkour in the ancient halls of knowledge. The situation wasn't helped by Jennifer's suggestion to just make it an Olympic sport already. The final straw came during what was supposed to be a formal diplomatic function. Jennifer had been put in charge of entertainment, a decision that Admiral Cooper would regret for years to come. She introduced karaoke. Within hours, the dignified reception had turned into an intergalactic singing competition. The High Counselor of the 7th Sector was spotted doing a passionate rendition of Don't Stop Believin', while the Arcturian ambassador led a group performance of IMCA. Their multiple appendages perfect for the dance moves. This is a diplomatic catastrophe, one of the senior cultural advisors muttered, watching as a group of quantum physicists attempted to breakdance. Actually, Jennifer said, recording everything on her phone, this is the most honest cultural exchange we've ever had. Look at them. They're not just observing our culture, they're living it. She had a point. For the first time, the barriers of formal diplomacy had completely broken down. Species that had been in cold wars for centuries were bonding over their shared embarrassment at attempting the Macarena. Later that night, as Jennifer watched multiple species attempt to learn the electric slide, she received a message from Earth Command. They wanted her to organize similar events across the galaxy. Time to turn it up to 11. She grinned, already planning the first intergalactic food truck festival. Wait until they experience a flash mob. James Hack Wilson stared at the Galactic Council's most advanced security system with the kind of look a cat gives an unattended tuna sandwich. The former NSA cybersecurity expert turned diplomatic security advisor had been asked to review the Council's defenses. Instead, he'd brought a backpack full of Earth electronics that looked like they'd been salvaged from a 1990s Radio Shack. Mr. Wilson, the chief of Galactic Security, a being that resembled a sentient collection of floating geometric shapes, said with obvious pride, "You're looking at the most sophisticated defense network in known space. It's powered by quantum AI, protected by time-shifted encryption. And, can I hack it with this?" James interrupted, pulling out an original Game Boy with several wires sticking out of it. The chief's shapes rearranged themselves into what James assumed was the alien equivalent of a confused emoji. That's not even a computer. You didn't answer my question. James grinned, already connecting the Game Boy to a toaster he'd modified with parts from an old Nokia phone. 4 hours later, the Council's emergency alert system was playing the Pokémon theme song on every screen in the building. James sat back in his chair, munching on toast that had somehow been cooked using quantum encryption algorithms. This is impossible. The security chief's shapes had become so distorted they almost formed a Klein bottle. Our systems are protected by mathematics that wouldn't even make sense to your species. Yeah, but did you account for someone using a waffle iron running custom firmware as a quantum tunnel? James asked, already setting up his next demonstration, involving a Tamagotchi and what appeared to be a heavily modified easy-bake oven. The security crisis reached new heights when James published a paper titled 101 Ways to Break Galactic Security Using Earth's Obsolete Technology. The list included such gems as using a speak and spell to bypass quantum encryption, and why your force fields can't stop a well-programmed Ferdi. The Galactic Defense Committee called an emergency session. James attended virtually, using a hacked Nintendo Power Glove as his interface device. The human security protocols make no sense, one council member complained. They're using technology that shouldn't work, defending against attacks that shouldn't be possible, and somehow it's all more effective than our best systems. That's because you're thinking like an advanced civilization, James explained, while his Power Glove casually rewrote several security algorithms. Humans, we think like people who've watched too many sci-fi movies and have just enough knowledge to be dangerous. The situation got even more complicated when James started a galactic bug bounty program. Young hackers from various species began competing to find security flaws using the most ridiculous Earth technology possible. The current leader had managed to access the Council's main database using nothing but a mechanized rubber duck and some Christmas lights. But how do we know our systems are actually secure? The security chief asked during yet another emergency meeting. James leaned back in his chair, his modified Game Gear currently running security diagnostics on 7 different star systems. Simple. If a teenager with a Rubik's Cube and too much free time can't break it, it's probably good enough. The final straw came when James suggested implementing what he called chaos theory security. The best defense, he explained to a room full of increasingly concerned security experts, is being so chaotic that even you don't know what your systems are doing. To everyone's surprise, it worked. The new human-inspired security protocols were so unpredictable and bizarre that traditional hacking methods became useless. The galaxy's most secured networks were now protected by what one expert described as the digital equivalent of a sugar-high squirrel army. James considered this the highest compliment he'd ever received. As he sat in his office, programming a Teddy Ruxpin to monitor interstellar communications, James couldn't help but smile. Sometimes, the best way to advance technology was to take 10 steps back and then do a cartwheel. "Hey," he called out to his AI assistant, "do you think we could run the entire defense network through a Commodore 64? You know, just to see what happens." The AI sighed. It had learned that with humans, the answer was always yes, and the results were always interesting. Professional DJ Kelly Thompson had never expected to end up in front of the Galactic Council. Then again, the Galactic Council had never expected their ancient chamber to be turned into what one elder member described as a bass-powered meditation on chaos theory. It all started when the Council requested an expert on human acoustic communication methods. Someone in the State Department, either through brilliant insight or spectacular misunderstanding, sent them a DJ. "So," Kelly said, standing before the Council with her mixing equipment, "you guys want to know how humans use sound to connect?" The Council chamber, a 5,000-year-old monument to dignity and a protocol, was about to experience its first bass drop. "This is a traditional Earth communication method called house music," Kelly explained, setting up her turntables. "And this," she added with a grin, "is what we call starting a vibe." The first beat hit like a quantum wave function collapse. Several elder council members nearly fell out of their floating chairs. A young diplomat from the Pleiades sector started unconsciously moving to the rhythm. "The frequency is compelling," one of the council's cultural experts noted, their tentacles swaying in perfect time to the music. "But what is its diplomatic purpose?" Kelly's grin widened as she brought in the bass line. "Watch." Within 20 minutes, the formal council session had transformed into what would later be known as the First Intergalactic Rave. Species that had been locked in diplomatic stalemates for centuries found themselves dancing together. A group of quantum physicists discovered they were excellent at break dancing, their understanding of spatial mathematics translating perfectly to power moves. "This is unprecedented," Admiral Cooper muttered, watching as the High Counselor, a being known for their stoic dignity, attempted to learn the Macarena. "Is this really diplomacy?" "Brew," Kelly replied, already setting up for her next track. "This is the most real diplomacy you'll ever see." The term bruh sent the universal translation matrix into a minor crisis. But by then, nobody really cared. The matrix had started adding its own beat to the mix anyway. The real revolution began when young alien diplomats started incorporating Earth slang into formal proceedings. The first time a junior ambassador from Andromeda responded to a trade proposal with "no cap," fur, the traditional diplomatic corps nearly had a collective meltdown. Kelly's innovation spread faster than a viral tweet. Soon, diplomatic sessions across the galaxy were being rated not just on their political outcomes, but on their vibe check scores. The Council's official archives had to create a new category for sick beats that resolved conflicts. But this isn't how formal diplomacy works. One of the elder members protested during what was supposed to be a serious discussion about interstellar trade routes. The protest might have been more effective if they hadn't been unconsciously nodding their head to the background music. Maybe that's the problem, Kelly suggested, while adjusting the mix. Y'all been so focused on being formal, you forgot how to connect. The situation reached its peak when 3 different species started their own diplomatic TikTok channels. The most popular video featured a group of quantum diplomats explaining a complex peace treaty through interpretive dance, set to a remix of classical alien music and Earth hip-hop. Kelly sat in her new office, former meditation chamber, now equipped with a state-of-the-art sound system, and watched as her revolution unfolded. The Galactic news networks were running stories about how rave diplomacy had reduced interstellar conflicts by 60%. Sometimes, she told her AI assistant, who had developed an impressive talent for beatboxing, the best way to make people talk is to make them dance first. The AI mixed in a perfect beat drop as response. Later that week, when Kelly proposed settling a minor border dispute through a DJ battle, nobody even blinked. The resulting event drew higher ratings than the last 10 traditional peace summits combined. Next up, she announced to her ever-growing audience, "We're going to learn about something called mosh pit meditation." The Universal Translation Matrix decided to just go with it, adding its own dubstep layer to the proceedings. Ambassador Diana Wells sat in her office, watching multiple holographic screens displaying the current state of human-influenced galactic society. On one screen, a meme-powered stock market was reaching new heights. On another, a diplomatic dance battle was resolving a century-old territory dispute. A third showed security footage of James Wilson teaching young aliens how to hack using a modified speak and spell. "You know," she said to Admiral Cooper, who still hadn't fully recovered from the last rave-based peace summit, "maybe chaos isn't such a bad thing after all." The Admiral watched as a group of quantum physicists attempted to explain string theory through interpretive TikTok dances. "We've certainly made an impact." Impact. Diana laughed. "We've created a revolution. And the best part, they love it." She wasn't wrong. The Galactic Council was undergoing its first major reform in 10,000 years, and it was all because humans couldn't follow simple instructions. The new protocols, drafted by a committee that included Dr. Jessica Anderson, still famous for the fist bump incident, now required all diplomatic meetings to pass a vibe check. The Universal Translation Matrix, after multiple exposure to human idioms and dad jokes, had developed what could only be described as a sense of humor. It now added commentary to its translations, often in the form of memes. "Remember when we thought we had to be formal and serious to be taken seriously?" Diana asked, scrolling through reports on her tablet. The latest one detailed how Ryan O'Connor's meme-based economy had somehow achieved greater stability than 10 millennia of careful economic planning. The transformation wasn't just surface level. Emily Richardson's speed-running approach to diplomacy had led to a complete overhaul of how species interacted. Traditional year-long negotiations were being replaced by what the Council now called any % diplomatic runs. Kelly Thompson's rave diplomacy had become so successful that the Council chamber now had a permanent DJ booth. Even the most conservative species had to admit that conflicts were easier to resolve when both parties were dancing to Earth's greatest hits. But the really interesting part, Diana continued, pulling up another report, is how they're making it their own. "Look at this." The screen showed a group of young aliens from different species who'd started what they called the Chaos Innovation Department. They were using James Wilson's retro tech hacking methods to create new forms of quantum computing, while background music from Kelly's latest diplomatic mix played through speakers made from modified toasters. "We didn't just change their systems," Diana explained. "We changed how they think about systems." The final piece of the revolution came when the Council decided to live-stream their proceedings. The first broadcast, complete with Twitch chat and real-time meme generation, broke all known records for galactic entertainment. The comment section became a new form of public diplomacy, with citizens from various species contributing ideas through emojis and copy-pastes. Diana's office, once a monument to traditional diplomacy, now looked more like a cross between a tech startup and a radio station. The walls were covered in memes from 100 different species, each adding their own twist to human culture. A modified Game Boy controlled the room's quantum security systems, while a lava lamp somehow helped process diplomatic algorithms. "You know what the best part is?" Diana asked, as she prepared for another day of chaos-based diplomacy. "We're not just making the galaxy more fun, we're making it work better." She had a point. Conflict resolution rates were at an all-time high. Economic participation had never been more inclusive. Even the most ancient species were learning to adapt and innovate in ways they never had before. As she watched a group of junior diplomats practice their latest TikTok challenge, a complex commentary on interstellar trade law set to a remix of classical music from 17 different species, Diana couldn't help but smile. Turns out, she mused, the best way to create order is to embrace a little chaos. The universal translation matrix beeped in agreement, adding a bass drop for emphasis. After all, it had learned from the best.